Welcome to Voiced. Today's post is from subreddit Tifu by Granny Go Away, and it is about an unexpected and incredibly awkward experience at a family church event that took a surprising turn with his ex-girlfriend. This past Sunday, I went to church with my parents for the first time in years. My mom made me promise that I would be there because my little sister was getting baptized. For the record, I never shared the same passion for religion as my family, which is what prompted me to stop going to church ever since I moved out of the house and lived my own life. My parents always made attempts to convince me to at least show my face at church from time to time, but those attempts never resulted in me actually going to church. Until recently, I knew it would mean a lot to my little sister if I was there for her baptism. So there I was, sitting at the back, trying to avoid eye contact with members of the congregation who recognized me as the pastor's son, who none of them had seen in person since I was a teenager. The church member whose eyes I was trying to avoid the most was my ex-GF. Even though our relationship ended years ago, I could still feel some degree of tension when I saw her. I was a boy when we broke up, a horny boy. She was the prim and proper choir girl who wanted me to be less horny and more holy. In other words, we were doomed to break up. While I was awkwardly avoiding eye contact, my ex-GF disappeared. When I eventually saw her again, she was standing on stage with a group of girls. All of them were dressed in white robes. It was giving Jesus meet Midsummer. Not sure if the robes were unintentionally designed to be see-through, but at the right angle I could literally see that most of the girls were wearing nothing but underwear underneath. Cue pre-baptism performance dance that I had no idea was going to happen. Even though it was classified as spiritual dancing, the low-key transparent robes mixed with the ritualistic movements made the whole thing feel somewhat seductive. I'll admit, I was getting turned on watching my ex. And I think my ex was well aware of that, because at some point the dancers were moving through the audience, and my ex just happened to appear exactly where I was sitting. She was blurring the lines between spiritual dancing and spiritual butt shaking, based on the way she was moving her hips in front of me. Mid-dance, she grabbed my hand and attempted to pull me up, but I stayed seated and repeatedly mouthed over the music, "Don't do this to me." Somehow, my ex must have telepathically communicated with the other dancers, because all of a sudden, I was surrounded by dancers who seemed like they were not going to go away until I did whatever they wanted me to do, which was apparently to stand up for some reason. So I did, albeit very, very reluctantly. I followed my ex and the other dancers to the front, where I realized I was not the only person the dancers handpicked from the crowd to join their celebration. However, unlike the other chosen ones, I was just standing there looking uncomfortable, whereas the others were unsuccessfully trying to copy what the dancers were doing, which prompted the audience to praise what was happening. My ex once again grabbed my hands and wiggled my arms like she was trying to tell me to let loose. The villainous grin on her face during that moment confirmed what I already knew. My ex was repeatedly putting me on the spot to make me feel as uncomfortable as possible. Why? I had no fudge-inch idea. Unresolved relationship issues? Revenge of the religious kind because, unlike her, I didn't want to be a virgin until I got married? I didn't know. The fact that somehow I was still turned on while feeling like I wanted to get Thanos snapped into cremation was another mystery to me. Despite my ex going out of her way to get me to dance with her to gospel music in front of people I never wanted to see again, I gave her nothing to work with except for one line I shouted into her ear over the music. And the line was, "I can see your ass." My ex used her version of sign language to tell me that apparently she couldn't hear what I was saying. I shrugged and continued to stand there like a mannequin until the music and the dancing eventually came to an end. I thought the nightmare was over until a microphone magically appeared in my ex's hand. She spoke into the mic and said that God had compelled her to speak. As soon as she opened her mouth, I was no longer turned on. Hearing her instantly made me remember how most of my time during our relationship was spent listening to her talk about how God was telling her to do shit. I automatically tuned her out when she brought the mic to her mouth, but then, seconds before I was able to totally check out, I heard my name through the noise of her religious monologue. She was going on and on about forgiveness and how she struggled for years to forgive me until something miraculous happened. God sent me back to church, back to where we met, back to her, so that she could finally realize that she was ready to forgive. I heard an unnecessary speech from an unpredictable ex. The church heard Morpheus or some crap based on the excessive praise my ex was getting. My ex never specifically said what exactly she was forgiving me for, but she dropped enough key words for anyone listening to read between the lines and figure out that she was implying that she was all about the faith during our relationship, whereas I was all about the flesh. I made no eye contact until my ex literally looked me in the eye and said she forgave me. She hugged me. I used the hug to whisper the following. I said, "I can see your ass." My ex replied and said, "And I can see you're still thinking with your jerk." We eventually stopped hugging and parted ways. I felt like I was doing the walk of shame as I approached my seat. Needless to say, not the most pleasant experience. Even though I made my family very happy by being there, I never want to go through something like that ever again. And I most definitely never want to see my ex again. Despite what she might believe, I'm fully convinced that Satan created her. Wow, talk about an unexpected trip to church. It's crazy how a seemingly innocent family outing for a baptism turned into a cringe-worthy reunion with unresolved past drama. I can't imagine the mix of emotions that must have gone through you trying to support your sister while simultaneously dodging the very public antics of an ex with a flair for the theatrical. It's wild how those past relationships can resurface at the most inconvenient times, especially in such a charged atmosphere. What do you all think? Have you ever experienced a similarly awkward moment where the past comes back to haunt you in public? Share your stories in the comments below. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Voiced. If you enjoy daily, high-quality stories, please like and subscribe to show your support.